welcome to the show today, Marissa Streit. She is the CEO of Prager University, the host of Real Talk on Prager University. It's good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we get a lot going on. There's so much I want to talk to you about. I mean, just woman to woman here. There's a lot I want to talk to you about. But let me start here with the news. So Biden over there in Japan, they got G7 going on. It's being held in Hiroshima. And the big topic du jour, and I get it because I think we're all nervous about ChatGPT and the iterations of it and what people are able to extract from it. We hope that they're going to get all kinds of opinions, lots of different information. But I think there's a group out there, including those at G7, that want to make sure that their viewpoint is being heard loud and clear. There is a race right now, an information race where everybody's trying to control something. How do we navigate this? What is your experience as somebody who is running an organization that is devoted to making sure conservative thought is heard?
You know, Trish, I think that my conclusion, just observing what is happening around the world, but specifically in America, is that legacy media is freaked out. They are freaked out that there is less control. They've had so much control over what people were allowed to hear and say. And if you look at what has happened, you know, even with Fox, right, in your previous experience, and the New York Times controlled, you know, it was the paper of record, and they've lied to us for decades. If you study their record, you'll see that, I mean, the lying started so many years ago, we just had no idea. But because of what has happened with the emerging media companies, whether it's the Daily Wire or podcasts like yours or Prager U, we are now starting to share information and they don't like it. And so they're doing everything they can. It's an absolute scramble to make sure that they can control the narrative and they can control information. And I'll give you an example of what has happened to us with a company called NewsGuard. So they are self-declared fact checkers. They claim that they're the arbiters of truth and they get to determine what is truthful information and what is misinformation. And how do they do this? Well, first of all, their funding. Their funding comes from some of the largest companies in the world. They have a partnership with Publicis, which oversees the PR for many of the pharmaceuticals for the European unions. And if you look up who's on their board, you can also see that they've received $750,000 from the Department of Defense. And so they're working with the government to make sure that companies like ours, media companies like ours, emerging media companies that are not controlled by legacy institutions, are pretty much suffocated both economically and from an opportunity to speak to the public. They don't like the idea that they can no longer control information. And what we have seen in recent years is that they've used tech in order to do that. They created this third-party fact checker to go and slap labels of misinformation on companies like Prager U, the Daily Wire, Breitbart, and the list goes on. And what they'll do is they'll rate media companies from 0 to 100. If you get a rating of 60 and below, you get a red label and you're considered misinformation. And what NewsGuard will do is they'll go to other entities, other plugins, and I foresee financial institutions too, and they will put pressure on them to not work with media companies like ours. And I'll give you an example of what has happened here at Prager U. A couple of years ago, I received an email from our video player company. So this is a plugin that we use on our website in order to serve our videos. And Prager U makes, you know, hundreds of videos every single year. And we use this plugin to serve our videos. And JW Player sent us an email saying you have 1 month and you're out. Within 1 month, we're kicking you off the platform and you have to find a new way to serve your videos. And, you know, we were really puzzled by it. You know, we're a great company. We always pay on time. We really actually don't complain that much.
I love your videos. And they're like, they make you think. And you got a lot of really very intellectual concepts on there. And a lot of, you know, I like the economic stuff. Come on. Wow.
We are so unbelievably careful about our content. We, you know, because we have our own credibility to maintain, right? That is everything to us, our credibility. We don't have legacy media protecting us, right? There's nobody out there protecting us and making sure that, you know, our narrative is shared. And so we have to be very, very careful. It's all about our merit and credibility, which I love, because that's what holds us accountable. But NewsGuard hates that, right? And so JW Player was pressured by NewsGuard to kick us off the platform. What's wrong with our Pulitzer Prize winners and MIT professors and, all these brilliant authors that are coming on our platform and are sharing information? They care about protecting the bullies who they have been hired. They're like the mafia. All right. They're behind the scenes mafia, and they've been hired by these very powerful entities to control information. And you're seeing this used through technology. So, you opened the segment with ChatGPT. Well, here it is, another technology which we're very quickly going to become addicted to, right? They make us addicted, and they get to decide what we get to hear and what we don't. And that is really the issue that we're having now, is that they're fighting for control.
And this is exactly what happened. That whole dossier, which, by the way, Marissa, I looked at it and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is not an intelligence document. This is Oppo research. You can tell just the writing style itself, right? Had all the evidence, to me anyway, as a journalist, of Oppo research, ready for, Star Magazine or something. And so I looked at it and I was like, But then the next logical thing, what would I do as a reporter? Oh, I'd check it out, right? Maybe I'd call that hotel in Moscow where the incident supposedly happened and find out if Donald Trump had actually been there on those dates. They didn't do any of it. And we know the whole thing. And I just kept saying, this is really perverse, frankly, the idea that this Washington, prestigious law firm, by the way, prestigious law firm in Washington, D.C., is outsourcing to Fusion GPS, which is an Oppo firm, basically, that's outsourcing to some ex-British spy who's got some contacts in Russia, who then has this other guy who the U.S. even suspected of being a Russian spy at the time, writing this stuff. I mean, it makes your head spin, and you're like, how could they be this stupid? How could they be this incompetent? But maybe it wasn't incompetency at all.
Yeah, I agree.
It was about control.
It's about control. I don't think they want journalists to do what we believe journalists should be doing. They don't want journalists to actually investigate and share the truth. They want it to appear as if they're doing so, but they actually want to control information. And I know that because when we create videos about climate, right, we get Nobel Prize winners, we get MIT professors, we get experts in the world of energy explaining to us what is happening on the climate, and we actually get slapped a label that it's misinformation. Well, who has the correct information? The wind and solar industry? When they write about how great wind and solar is, then it's the truth? Right? It's because if we criticize wind and solar, apparently it's fake information.
And by the way, I'm just like, look, we need all the energy we can get, right? I'm all for you, bring it on, right? And yet there's no willingness to admit sort of basic truths like, okay, you're going to take Russia offline. So there's going to be no nat gas that the open market's supposed to buy. I mean, it still happens, but that you're supposed to buy. So maybe if you're Joe Biden's energy secretary, you might want to actually think about, hey, maybe I don't want to make this transition to green energy today, only because I got a lot of people that are going to suffer in the meantime. Let's do what we can on all fronts. Let's have all the information, right? Let's recognize everything and make educated decisions. But nobody's making educated decisions. And frankly, and this gets me, you know where I'm going with this. This gets me back to a company called BlackRock, which has more than half the size of U.S. GDP under management. It's the biggest asset management company in the world. It's run by Larry Fink. I know him. I've interviewed him many times. He was always very hot on this idea that you could really have these public-private partnerships. Yeah, but now I'm looking at it going, okay, if Larry Fink and BlackRock get to pick who the winners are, who the losers are, and hey, Exxon, we don't like you because you're traditional energy, but this windmill company, you're great. Shouldn't it be the consumer that's picking it, as opposed to, this asset management company from way up here? It seems to me that that's a recipe for a communist style state as opposed to a capitalist driven, thriving economy.
I mean, there's that element. And shouldn't the investor in BlackRock have the right to actually want to make money? I mean, if somebody is, there should be fiduciary responsibility to actually put the interest of the investor first and not this fake ESG, whatever that means, environmentally and socially governed. What does that even mean? If somebody's investing in BlackRock, they work their entire lives, right, to earn that money, and they're going to depend on that money. And now BlackRock is going to come back and say, you know what, we have ESG now, and so we may or may not make as much money for you as you hoped, because the socially governed thing, is ever changing. And,
this is why states actually need to do with and we're seeing evidence, like Kansas, Florida, they're like, hey, BlackRock, we don't think we want to leave our teachers' pension with you anymore, right? Because our teachers need to retire someday.
It should be illegal that one is investing with them and they get to change the terms and actually say, you know what, I can make less money for you because we'd like to have more transgender people on this board or on that board. Yeah. Or we'd like to have more women. I'm a woman. I'm not anti-women. But if I understand that if somebody is investing in a company, they want to make money. They don't really care how many women there are on the board. Right. And
yes.
it's their way of actually, where I've seen this before, Trish?
Where?
I've seen this before in the world of education, because that's where I come from.
I taught every grade. By background?
I taught every grade, kinder through 7th. I ran a school, and you know what the teachers' unions would do? They would pressure society to accept the fact that they would lower the standards every single year in the name of some nonsense, socially governed type of thing. And who at the end of the day suffered from it? The students. Because every year they would lower the standards. And who gained from it? The people who don't need to be accountable anymore. And so now it's actually cookie cutter, right? The business environment has taken the same thing. Let's find a bunch of social statements that can be ever evolving so that we can lower our standards in what we actually owe the public, where we promised actual earnings. Okay, well, now no longer are we promising specific earnings. Now we're promising some social thing, right? Well, it's the same thing of what happened with the schools, right? We used to actually have standards, and because they pushed this very vague social thing, now the standards are lower and lower. Are you okay with that? Are you okay investing in a fund that actually is not going to give you specific standards in the name of ESG? I wouldn't be okay with it.
No, and a lot of people do. This is interesting because a lot of people don't even know, right? They're like, okay, I'm a firefighter. I've got my firefighter's pension. I'm putting money in, and they think it's going to be there someday, and they're hoping for a certain return. It may not be if the guy and gal and team running your money actually is more focused on this who knows what, as opposed to profitability for companies. And you see the distraction it creates, right? Bud Light's a great example. Anheuser-Busch is just getting killed in the market. They've lost some $6 billion in market cap since this whole ordeal started. And then you have Miller Lite. They've got a new commercial out that's pretty woke and gives you some insight into their mindset. And it's now Molson Coors is also getting hurt in the market. And that's what's going to happen, right? Because I think the market ultimately is pretty simple. You've got to produce for investors, meaning you got to sell your stuff. So just go sell some beer, however you need to do it, go sell some beer and forget about the rest of what's going on. But you mentioned something interesting, because I think a lot of people don't know if their funds are invested with BlackRock to begin with. And in terms of schools, parents don't always realize what's going on. And there's a lot of literature now. I'm a big believer. You read whatever you want to read. Everything should be available. I'm not going to say, ban any book. But I am going to say some books may not be appropriate to be read in a certain grade level or to be on display in the middle school library. I mean, I'm sorry, but time and place and age appropriateness actually matters. And yet there's this push, which frankly, I kind of find sort of bizarre, and you know a lot about this, so I'm curious to get your thoughts. There's this push to sort of have this, free for all, right? And gender dysphoria is now becoming a very real thing for a lot of kids because, hey, you're 12, 13 years old. It's not fun. It's not fun for any 12, 13-year-old, especially a young girl. Think about the changes in boys too, the changes you're going through. Maybe if they're throwing this other option out there, it's confusing enough that it's having a detrimental effect on kids. What are you seeing in terms of teachers' unions and the desire to, dare I say, brainwash a generation?
The word gaslighting should have been invented for America's education. I mean, you as a parent, we are being gaslit from every single direction. When I was a teacher about 20 years ago, at the very least, the education system somewhat tried to hide its leftist views. I still call them leftist indoctrination centers even 10 years ago, but at least it was in hiding. Now it's no longer in hiding. If you pick up the NEA's magazine where they actually write out what their agenda is, you will be astonished to hear that it is so far left they can actually fall off the cliff. And I'll give you a few examples. Mm-hmm. One of them is to promote the stacking of America's courts. Okay? America's courts.
Like what,
really?
Venezuela.
Like, really? Like, that is the role.
The first thing he did.
That is the role of the teachers union to promote the stacking of the Supreme Court. And then it goes on to promote giving more asylum to Venezuelans and South Americans. And look, I have no issue with immigrants, right? Like, my mom came from Morocco, but why is that an issue for the NEA? And then there are like 15 sections in there that are about how to promote LGBTQ and gender affirming care, and to basically push the sexualization of our children. Again, I'm all about freedom. People can do at home what they want to do, but this should not be the agenda of America's teachers, to push the questioning of a child's gender, because we know that it leads very rapidly to hormone blockers, chemical castrations, and then actual surgical castrations. These are things that are actually written out in black and white in the agenda of the teachers union's platform. Talk about gaslighting. How many parents do you think know this? And the list goes on and on and on with every single thing that possibly bothers you as a true American, and I would say liberty-minded individual, is in there as an agenda to push teachers to do. And I'll give you one of the most important things that people need to know. And that is those fact checkers that we talked about earlier, NewsGuard, they have an official partnership with AFT, the American Federation of Teachers.
Wow. Okay. So what is that telling us? I lost you from the view.
Well, what does this partnership mean for AFT? So AFT has about 2 million members in it. So now you have NewsGuard inserting its software into all of these classrooms that have the partnership with NewsGuard. And so when a teacher looks up information, or let's say a student looks up information in a school, if Prager U shows up, there will be a label that it's misinformation, and therefore the kids cannot access it. And it's not just Prager U, right? It's anybody that goes on the bad list of the fact checkers that we already know who it's controlled by. And so here we go with the I mean, the goal is control of information from every single direction.
So they're going to control information, but to what end? I mean, Marissa, listen, like, there's a reason why we are the number one economy in the world. There's a reason why we enjoy a very high standard of living. There's a reason why we are the one and only country to which a dream is talked about, right? I'll talk to people from other places and they're like, no, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a French dream, right? Or Moroccan dream. Like, it's the American dream, or an Irish dream. The Irish dream is to come to America. In Mexico, they all want to come to America for the American dream. We need to keep all the access to opportunity open to everyone so that we can all have a shot, right, at that American dream. And it seems to me there is a real effort, and I just don't understand it, an effort to destroy that all in somehow the name of equality. Let me tell you, this is one darn equal. You ask anybody, right, in some godforsaken place of the world, would they rather be there or would they rather be in America, where it's allegedly so this, that, and the other, right? I mean, I fundamentally do not believe. I recognize there are parts of the country that are most likely racist or have various prejudices. But I think for the most part, like, we're pretty simple. And if you're good at something, you have huge opportunity here, unlike in any other country. So why would you destroy that?
Trish, Trish, nothing good lasts forever, certainly if you don't protect it. right? You look at every civilization that has fallen. I happen to have just traveled to Egypt, and I saw, all the amazing, miraculous things that they built in ancient Egypt, and, that tanked. And we have come to a point in America where we're complacent. We're no longer teaching our kids the value of our country. We're actually teaching them the opposite of that, right? Patriotism is a bad word now.
There's a danger in that. And so I'm going to play some sound. Humor me for a minute. And the viewers too, because you've heard me play this before. There's a feminist, you, I'm sure know her, Camille Paglia, who is an academic actually out of Philadelphia, and she's written a lot on gender, et cetera. She's really been known to be pretty left, but she's kind of like almost so left, she's sort of right. I think it's very interesting hearing from her. This is a lecture she gave back in, I want to say 2015, possibly 2016, and she talks about something that you just alluded to. So let me play you this short clip and get your reaction, Marissa, on the other side.
Proof of it. But now I began all of my studies, my book Sexual Personae began as a dissertation at Yale graduate school on androgyny. I've always been fascinated, attracted to the subject of androgyny, and that's what sexual personae is. I explored it in history. But the more I explored it, I realized that that historically the movement toward androgyny occurs in late phases of culture. Okay, as a civilization is starting to unravel. Okay, and that you can find it again and again and again through history in the Greek art. Okay, you can see it happening. All of a sudden, okay, there's a kind of there's the sculptures of handsome nude young men athletes that used to be very robust. Okay, in the archaic period, suddenly began to seem like wet noodles. Okay, toward the end. Okay, and that the people who live in such periods, a late phase of culture, whether it's the Hellenistic era, whether it's the Roman Empire, whether it's the Mauve decade of Oscar Wilde in the 1890s, whether it's Weimar Germany, people who live at such times, okay, feel that they're very sophisticated, they're very cosmopolitan, okay, homosexuality, heterosexuality, so what, anything goes, and so on, all right, and so, but from the perspective of historical distance, okay, you can see that it's a culture that no longer believes in itself, okay, and then what you invariably get are people who are convinced of the power of heroic masculinity, okay, on the edges, whether they're the Vandals and the Huns, okay, or whether they're the barbarians of ISIS. Okay, you see them,
Okay, so we were just listening there to Camille Paglia, and I'm here with Marissa Streit, CEO of Prager University. What do you think? Because you were saying something which to me sounded somewhat similar, that we are running the risk of really kind of seeing all this greatness that we've had just kind of go up in smoke. She's pointing out that that's happened before. What are your thoughts?
Well, one of the things she said is that we have a culture that no longer believes in itself, right? That's what she talked about, other cultures. And I would take that even further and say that we have a culture that knows nothing about itself, right? We have spent generations of not educating our kids about why America works. Like, why did 84,000 migrants try to come here, this past month? Why? Like, why are people wanting to come here if it's such a bad place? It's not a bad place. That's why they all want to come here, right? But do we understand what has made America such a great place? Do we understand Western civilization? Do we understand how hard our founders worked to take pieces from other civilizations and put it together and cook it into this magnificent place that it is today, and it has lasted at least till now? We have not taught that to our kids. Our media is basically keeping it away from us, and we have a problem. And so people don't have anything to protect because they don't even understand what they're protecting. And if you dare to say that you're patriotic or that you believe in nationalism, you get attacked. If you dare to put an American flag in front of your house on 4th of July in many cities around America, you will literally be attacked. And so when you're raising a generation that doesn't understand where it comes from, that walks around in shame for being an American, what will they actually protect? And what will happen if we don't protect it? If you don't fight for good things, you will lose them across the board, full stop. And that is what's happening in America.
Yeah, it's very true. Well, I know you guys are fighting hard yourselves and trying to do everything you can to make sure people hear all sides. So go check out Marissa's show, Real Talk, Prager University. Become a part of the team there at Prager University by going to the website, right? They go to prageru.com.
Yeah, we have our own OTT. You can watch Netflix sometimes when you want Cheetos for your brain, but if you want broccoli for your brain, download Prager U, get the OTT for you and your kids. We have content for ages 4 to 104. I guarantee you, Trish, if your kids watch Prager U shows, they will be the smartest kids at the next birthday party.
I'm gonna start doing that. I won't let
Just do it.
I won't let them watch YouTube, TikTok, Facebook.
No.
Like there's none of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what?
You let them watch Prager U. You can go take a bath, relax. They'll be, it's the good form of binge watching.
You'll feel smarter for sure. And you will be smarter.
Yeah.
Listen, Marissa, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all you're doing. We appreciate it.